Hello and happy Monday. Thank you all for joining the Alumni Society today for the latest installment of our Microlearning series, which provides actionable advice and insights from members for members. I'm Christina Merrill, member and community engagement and communications manager at the Alumni Society and a proud graduate of Columbia. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Pedro David Espinoza. Pedro is a graduate of UC Berkeley and an author, TED Talk speaker, and the founder and CEO of Pan Peru USA. Hi, Pedro.
Christina, thank you so much for having me. And hi, everyone at TAS. Super honored to be at the Alumni Society and love all the programming and all the events that we do.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. It's great to have you. A quick note, during today's session, one lucky attendee will be selected to win a complimentary copy of Pedro's book, Differences That Make a Difference. So please keep an eye on the chat for when a member of our team sends you a direct message so we can get your mailing address for that. Also, time permitting, we'll open the floor for questions from the audience. So if you have a question for Pedro, feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat and we'll try and get to it. So let's dive right in. Pedro, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do today.
Thank you, Christina. Once again, super joyful. Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Peru. Like Christina mentioned, I went to Berkeley and I graduated in 2017. I think a lot about my stories about failing forward, just to be very vulnerable and open. I had a 2.6 GPA in college and a lot of failing forward experiences. But today I do a bit of everything. So I serve in a few boards. I'm in the board of Surplus Service. I'm in the board of directors of ActAware in San Francisco. I'm actively in venture capital. I do a lot of angel investing with my co-author and with myself. I invest in SaaS and open AI stuff and machine learning. And then my full-time focus in the US is Pan Peru USA. We're a social venture where we empower women to become entrepreneurs. And how do we do this? We formed a board of directors here in California and in the US where we have people, executives from Pfizer, Bristol Myers Squibb, Cisco, and Oracle to help us raise capital so we can deploy it in Peru and help these SMB small businesses created by women. And the goal is to expand to other countries like Mexico, Venezuela, and other places as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
Love it. Love it. You're certainly very busy with lots of exciting things. So thank you for sharing. So tell us, let's dive into today's topic. You tell us, Pedro, what does it mean to be relational versus transactional when making connections?
Great question, Christina. I think number one, being vulnerable and being authentic and bringing your whole self. I think one key competitive advantage for us Hispanics, Latinas, Latinos, and tech and in corporate America is not being ashamed of our roots, right? And like being open about where we come from or our parents or grandparents. I can share one anecdote that helped me be relational over transactional. It was earlier this year that I went to Davos for the World Economic Forum, and I had the opportunity to meet the chairman of Intel, and he's also the chairman of Medtronic. His name is Dr. Omar Ishraq. And super, super great guy, Fortune 500 leader, executive, originally from Bangladesh, I believe. And we bonded because my mom, I'm pretty open about mental health. She had surgery last year. My mom has Parkinson's. And so she had the deep brain stimulation surgery to help the mobility for Parkinson's. And so she had a Medtronic generator like inside her chest. And so when we first met with the chairman of Medtronic, the former CEO, I was like, hey, Omar, by the way, my mom has this, I'm big on health. And he also shared about his family background and struggles, right, Cristina? So we were able to relate on a more human level rather than seeing, oh, you're an entrepreneur or board member or CEO, but being, hey, we are human first.
Love it. And what would you say are the consequences of being overly transactional?
Well, number one, you could be seen maybe as a just super dry or mercenary, right? Like people are like, oh, he only calls you when he wants a sale or when they want a board seat. You want to be seen as someone who cares, right? If you just reach out to a person asking them for a favor or an introduction, people know. People can detect ASAP if you're being authentic or not. I spend a lot of time with CEOs and Fortune 500 chairwomen, chairmen. And the number one thing that I see is that they're amazingly great at detecting if you're a BS person or not, right? And so if you're being too transactional, if you're being too dry, too cold, then you're not going to be memorable. In the end, people buy and interact with people they like, right? So if you make yourself relatable, if you make yourself memorable, it'll be easier for them to connect with you. And that's where empathy comes in.
Love it. And so can you give an example or two of relational connections you have today that have been beneficial to your career?
Yeah, many. I think my favorite one, I always share this one in like corporate events for Hispanic Heritage Month, is how I met my first angel investor. So I was taking an engineering class at Stanford in 2014. I was 19, so I'm dating myself. I'm not too old. And I remember I was like, snap, how am I going to raise capital? I'm from Peru. I have zero network because I moved to the US when I was 18, right? So I had zero network. All my friends at Berkeley and Stanford were like, my mom works at Cisco, my dad works at VMware, nothing wrong with that. But I was like, my mom has no idea what VMware stands for, right? Because like they're in Peru. Anyway, I was a sophomore and I went to the Golden Bear Cafe, which is a cafeteria where freshmen and sophomores go. And I see this like 80-year-old businessman wearing a suit, Cristina. And my mom would always raise me saying, Júntate con los mejores, right? Like surround yourself with wiser people. So I approached this 80-year-old man saying, hey, can I eat next to you? He's like, sure. I'm like, my name is Pedro Espinoza. He's, oh, I'm Frank Baxter. And I'm Frank, why are you here? And he's like, well, my board meeting got rescheduled. I'm a trustee at the university. I was like, wow, that's really cool. I've never met a trustee of any college. Like, this is amazing. And Frank's like, what's your story? Why are you here? And I was like, well, this is a freshman cafeteria, so that's why I'm here. But we bonded, and immediately, Cristina, I use my hustler antennas, and this is a metaphor, right? That as immigrants or people of color, we can read people, we can connect with people. And I was like, Frank, why are you wearing a US flag and a pin from Uruguay on your suit, right? Those little pins, those magnets. And he was like, well, I used to serve as the US ambassador under President Bush. And that's when we bonded. We started speaking in Spanish. Two people from different generations, 1936, 1994, different ethnicities, mother tongues, different socioeconomic status, political affiliation, everything different, right? Net worth. But we bonded over Spanish because he lived in Uruguay and I'm Peruvian. And we became friends. In the end of our breakfast, he gave me his business card and I would send him follow-up emails on my startup ideas, on my challenges and opportunities. After 3 years of fostering that friendship and being in touch with him, asking him for advice, because not only was he the former ambassador, but also a trustee at Berkeley, and he was also the former CEO of Jefferies, the global investment bank. Can you guess who was the first person to write a check and invest in my fintech and my tech startup, Smiley Go? It was him, right? It was Frank Baxter. And not only did he do that, but he also connected me, Cristina, with other angel investors. And then he connected me with other venture capitalists. And years later in my career, as I got super old, I'm just kidding. I was 24 when my first book got published. He was the first CEO who endorsed my book. And I interviewed him for my book. So all these things, right, that add value, add value, add value. Today, Frank is a big supporter of PAN Peru. His family supports us. They buy handmade alpaca beanies and hats that the women make. So yeah, life is short, right? So let's embrace gratitude and joy and pay it forward. And Frank is family for me. But that's how we met, right? Being relational over transactional, not pitching to him right away, give me money. No. Being like, hey, this is my story. What's yours? And most importantly, I asked Frank, how can I help you? And that's where bilateral mentorship comes in. And can you picture this 19-year-old kid from Peru asking the CEO of Jefferies how he can help the big guy? But I did, right? I had the guts because we all need each other. And Frank said, Pedro, you're right. I'm actually leading a civic seminar for Latin American history, and I want more international students to engage. I'm 84. I don't know 20-year-old students from Brazil or Ecuador or Peru or Chile or Mexico, but you do. Can you help me invite your classmates to join my civic seminar? ¿Entienden? O sea, al final, we all need each other. You don't need a title to be a leader. You don't need to be a CEO to help another CEO. You don't have to be a multimillionaire like Frank to help another Fortune 500 CEO. So then again, friends, being relational over transactional.
Love it. And I love how you put in that bit about, how can I help you? I feel like that's a question maybe we should all be asking a little more often. Is that not just how can this person help me, but how can I help you? Because you were able to provide a solution. So I love it. Thank you. So does the concept of relational over transactional apply to other areas outside of business connections that might be useful for us and for our audience to be thinking about?
Definitely everywhere. I mean, not only in business, but also relationships, family, your communities. Many people are members of a yoga club or go to church or to synagogue or whatever makes you you. It's important to be relational over transactional. I'm going to share one anecdote of how I met one of my best friends. His name is Jack Fuchs. He's a professor at Stanford engineering at the GSB, the business school too. And at Stanford, like in many colleges like Columbia, at the end of the quarter, they send you a survey, like a feedback, right? They want to know if it was a good class, if you liked it. And I remember I was a terrible student, by the way. Like my GPA was so low because I was working, doing my startups and angel investing all the time. And I'm proud of it. But anyway, and so when the survey came from Stanford, I replied saying, hey, I can't really fill this survey. I skipped most of the class. I barely passed, but Jack is a cool guy because I don't know, I just Googled him. He went to Dartmouth and Stanford. And he emailed me, Cristina, right away. And he said, Pedro, I want to know why you skipped class. I care about you as an entrepreneurship engineering student. I want your feedback. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Why not? And so we met at Coho, which is it's like an Italian cafe at Tresidor in like downtown Stanford campus, for those of you that know. And immediately, right, like the antennas of reading people, I see Jack coming, and he was wearing tennis shoes. So I was like, oh my gosh, he might play ping pong, tennis. He loves running. I love sports. I'm all about soccer, swimming, basketball. I love any sport, volleyball. And so immediately I asked him like, hey, do you play sports? He's like, I play tennis. And I was like, oh, I grew up playing tennis in Peru. I love tennis. And so we bonded right away, Cristina. So little by little, during office hours, we became friends. And Jack shared about his family and his son who likes tennis. And we bonded, we became human. And I met his wife. And today now, with Jack, sometimes we go on trips together. We went to the Australian Open in January of this year. We went to the French Open in Paris. And he's a venture capitalist. And so I learned a lot about him from a venture capital perspective. But I think when it comes to friendships and relationships, it's really, really important to be relational over transactional. And I'll finish with this. I remember 3 years ago when Jack's son was searching for an internship. Jack was like, hey, I don't really invest in video game startups. And my son wants to work at a gaming company because he loves video games. Who doesn't, right? And I was like, hey, I know a lot of video game startups in the Bay Area that are hiring engineers and computer science programmers. And so helping, right, Cristina, like, how can I help you? How can I pay it forward? Like I said, you don't have to be a venture capitalist to help another venture capitalist. You don't have to be a VP to help another VP. We all need each other. Age is just a number. It's really maturity that speaks for itself.
Amazing. Amazing. And so on that note, we're all super busy and swamped for time. So what advice do you have in terms of efficiently building relational connections?
That's the billion-dollar question for sure. I would say less is more. Definitely less is more. Don't shoot, 100 bullets and expect all of them to come. For me, I have a Rolodex on my iPhone of, these are the 5 people who I can count on: Cristina, I can call, I can text, I can FaceTime when I'm crying, when I'm happy, when I need prayers. Like, it's good to have your personal board of directors. Less is more. Have someone for specific things, like one for tech, another one for real estate. Many of us here are homeowners, right? Another one for law, right? If you need JD advice, other one for finance, a CFO, an accountant. So been very fortunate that in my career, the last 10 years in the US, I've had a lot of people from the Alumni Society, from high tech and other great orgs that they just call me, I call them, and they're just there. You don't have to set up a calendar invite. You don't have to make it formal. Once you generate that trust, la confianza, then that's it. Like, you're in, right? And I think that's the most important thing, dear friends, is less is more. Tangible step number one. Tangible step number two, define your circles, right? Like I said, real estate, finance, tech, relationships, family, like, you know who the guru is for each thing. And the last thing for being relational over transactional and building your mentors and sponsors, I would say be intentional in finding the sponsors, because sponsors are the ones who wear your t-shirt when you're not there, in the boardroom, in the hiring room, in the promoting room. Mentors are good. They give you advice. But sponsors are the ones who have the skin in the game and vouch for you and connect you to other people, right? Like Rosemary, like Jack, like Frank. For me, I have a lot of sponsors who not only invested money, but also connected me to many more boards and tech investment opportunities.
Perfect. Perfect. And I feel like you just touched upon our next question, but just to make sure we're being thorough here, is there anything we should avoid when it comes to making connections? I'm sure there are many things we should avoid, but anything you want to add in terms of what we should avoid?
I think being patient. It takes time to build a relationship, a friendship. It took me a year to get Pat Gelsinger, the CEO of Intel, to write the foreword of my first book. It took me 3 years. My next book is coming out this winter, but Carlos Gutierrez, he was the former CEO of Kellogg's and U.S. Secretary of Commerce, good friend of mine. It took me 3 years to get to know him, and now he's writing the foreword of my next book, right? So success doesn't come from noche de la mañana. Like, you have to be patient. You have to listen. You have to learn. This is one of the last anecdotes. Like, you fail forward. How I got my first board member at Smiley Go when I was 21. Like many of us here, I remember I went to this conference and I had the cell phone number of Ron Gonzalez at the time, like 10, 15 years ago. He was the mayor of San Jose, but we were never buddies. We're not BFFs. And then one day, Cristina, I text the wrong Ron, and my buddy from church had the same initials, no joke. And I was like, hey man, when are we playing soccer? I'm going to buy chicken wings from Costco. We're going to do the Bible study and all these things and bring like the, ice cream, whatever. I don't do dairy, but anyway. And then Ron Gonzalez, the mayor, replies with a question mark. I was like, shoot, he's going to think I'm weird. He's going to block me, unfriend me on LinkedIn. I'm done. But no, I took that as an opportunity to befriend Ron Gonzalez and ask him, what sports do you practice? Do you go to mass or synagogue or mosque or whatever, right? Like, do you meditate? And he opened up. He was like, hey, I actually hike the dish at Stanford and Palo Alto. I actually go to this mass in San Jose, and I do this and that. And I got a coffee date with him, Cristina. In the end, after a few months, Ron Gonzalez joins the board of directors of Smiley Go. And then can you guess who introduced me to Dropbox, to Google? Motorola was part of Google 10 years ago. Who introduced us to San Jose Water Company? Of course, Ron Gonzalez, right? The mayor, right? So he got all these sales, all these clients and users, because it's all about relationships. And I'll finish with this. Who connected me to my co-author, Jorge Tittinger? Ron Gonzalez, right? The mayor of San Jose, because there's not a lot of Peruvians in the US and in the Bay Area. So anyway, it's all about relationships.
Love it. Love it. And then last question, what are some things we can all start doing today to be more relational in our connections with other people?
Number one, being your authentic self. And also number two, being vocal of what you need and what you want. I think the number one reason why a lot of women and people of color and, Latinos, we are over mentored yet under sponsored is because we don't verbalize what we need, right? And many times when we go to a conference or we go to events like this on Zoom, sometimes we're shy. Sometimes we're like, hey, I don't want to share that I want a promotion, or I don't want to share that I want a new job, or I don't want to share that I'm searching a nonprofit board seat. But you have to verbalize. How can people help you if you don't tell them what you need? And many, many times in circles like this, I see this, Christina, where people, I don't know, are afraid or are shy to ask for help. But it's important. There's nothing wrong in sharing your goals. And that's the number one advice that Pat Gelsinger, my older brother, mentor, friend of mine, he always tells me, Pedro, never be embarrassed of, being unabashedly passionate to fundraise for your nonprofit, for your book, for your startup, for your projects. Like, never be ashamed of what you're passionate about, right? So I think we have 13, 14 people in the room. I encourage you all to connect over LinkedIn, to get to know each other and share what you need, right? In the end, I've been open about what I want, and thankfully, people got me board opportunities at Surplus Service. They do ESG recycling. I've got a board seat at ActAware and other tech startups too. So it's important to verbalize your goals so people can see how they can help you.
Perfect. I love it. And so a couple of notes, folks. We're going to wrap it up soon. So if you have any questions for Pedro, go ahead and feel free to put it in the chat. But piggybacking off of what you just said, Pedro, I'll tell the folks in the room, if you have questions about a job search or just ways to leverage your membership with the Alumni Society, email us, email members@thealumnisociety.com. We have a very passionate team here who are, we want to help our members in any way possible. So email us and we'll always be happy to see what we can do. So piggybacking off of what you said, Pedro. I'm not seeing any questions come in, but that is okay, Pedro. Oh, wait, we got a message. Oh, gracias. Also, go Bears, and congratulations to Patty for being our book winner. Pedro, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your insight. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Thank you. It's a joy to be here. Yeah, my email is mail@pedroespinoza.com. Espinoza with a Z. So mail@pedroespinoza.com. And then I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn as well. I think LinkedIn is a great tool to get to know each other, recommend, refer one another. And last but not least, what Christina was sharing, take advantage of the Alumni Society. I'm super grateful for this community. I met great people like Jose Farrell, who's a Netflix person, and he helped me. So we all need each other, right? And I think the Alumni Society is great because you meet a lot of executives and entrepreneurs at Fortune 500 companies. So super grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for the ringing endorsement. Just a quick note, folks, to the audience: if you are interested in sharing your knowledge and insights in an upcoming microlearning series webinar, email us at members@thealumnisociety.com with your idea. Thank you all again, Pedro. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Bye.